It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. 5 bodies are found inside the sunken superyacht off the coast of Sicily. 1 person is still missing. Cave divers and drones searched the seabed for 3 days. Now a criminal investigation to find out why so many died. Also tonight, a man is arrested on suspicion of murder after a mother and her 3 children were killed in a house fire. Difficult decisions for the Chancellor as government borrowing hits its highest level since the pandemic.
Here in Chicago, hope makes a comeback as senior Democrats step up their attack on Donald Trump.
We do not need 4 more years of bluster and bumbling and chaos.
Overnight, we heard from Barack and Michelle Obama. Next, it's the turn of Bill Clinton and the man who could be vice president.
And a place to rest after a hard day's night being offered by the man who was biffed from the Beatles. Plus, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's coming up in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Hello there, good evening. There had been perhaps a small glimmer of hope that survivors could still be rescued alive from the wreckage of the luxury superyacht which sank in the Mediterranean. But today, body bags were brought ashore after a complex search operation involving cave divers and underwater drones. 5 passengers have now been found, 2 of them reportedly hiding behind mattresses, 4 bodies recovered. 1 person is still missing. The captain of the yacht has been questioned by the authorities, and the boss of the company that made it told Sky News it was, in his words, unsinkable. So why did the Bayesian sink, and why did so many on board die? Ashna Hurnag has tonight's first report from Sicily.
The moment they had feared. This was no longer a rescue mission, but one of recovery. 56 hours after the luxury superyacht sank off the coast of Sicily, one by one, some of those missing were confirmed dead. Of the 22 people on board, those unaccounted for include billionaire Mike Lynch and his teenage daughter Hannah. His friends, the chairman of finance firm Morgan Stanley International, Jonathan Bloomer, and his wife Judy, lawyer Chris Morvillo and his wife Nada, were missing too. The discoveries follow the death of the onboard chef Ronaldo Thomas. His family have paid tribute to the kindest soul.
Rick was a free spirit, you know. He had a very beautiful soul, and he's been around on many boats, private boats, as a chef, initially as a cook.
Working within tight 10-minute windows, divers have been plunging into the depths below. This remote-controlled vehicle has been beaming images back to those on the harbour. What were once drawings, diagrams and data pored over by admirers of the award-winning vessel were instead the focus of rescue workers. This is where some of the bodies have been found. A boat that boasted sleek design and luxurious interiors is now on the seabed. After managing to get access to those 6 cabins, divers made the sombre and devastating discovery of the people inside. It's understood that 2 of those individuals had been hidden behind mattresses. They'd been celebrating and holidaying on the vessel that boasted the tallest aluminium mast in the world. There is now speculation it could have been a reason why it capsized. The chief executive of the company that owns the firm which built the yacht leapt to its defence.
Knowing very well how the boats have always been designed and built, the sailing boat, it is well known, they're the safest in the most absolute sense. First of all, because they have very little surface compared to a yacht facing into the wind. Second, with the structure, the drift keel, they become unsinkable bodies.
The investigation into the incident is ongoing. Italian inspectors have spent hours questioning the yacht's captain, who managed to escape. They are considering the stability, how it was operated and the weather conditions. There will be difficult questions in time, but for now, very few answers. Ashna Hurnag, Sky News in Porticello.
Well, we know the yacht sank during extreme weather, confirmed tonight to be a sea spout or tornado by the captain of the nearest yacht to the Bayesian, moored off the coast of Sicily. Specialist divers struggled to reach the boat's cabins, hampered by floating furniture, narrow passageways and short dive times. Laura Bondoc has more on how the rescue operation unfolded.
The rescue operation started at dawn, entering a crucial phase. This is the Bayesian superyacht with its huge 72-metre mast, the second tallest in the world. Now, she was in Italy, sailing around islands off the coast of Sicily and was anchored here in Porticello Bay, usually a tranquil spot for yachts. This was the Bayesian's last position, according to data from marine traffic. Now, eyewitnesses say the yacht sank quickly. It's now on its side on the seabed, some 50 metres deep. Investigations to locate the missing passengers have been carried out from the air, the sea and underwater. Coast Guard helicopters are scanning the site from the sky, while a remotely operated vehicle, an ROV, is also being used. These are underwater robots controlled from the surface and fitted with special search equipment. They can operate in depths up to 300 metres and can stay underwater much longer than divers.
You've got a video camera at the front. There'll be a live feed of that to the surface for the more advanced versions that they'll be using. And these sort of drones have a sort of 6 to 7 hour time frame on there. And they can be operated on underwater. So that will really be helpful for the divers to use and to see which areas of interest for them to look at and what potential areas to be avoided as well, of course. Then it'll be trapped down there and all that material.
Up to 8 specialist divers have also been searching, but it is challenging work. Most only have 12 minutes, and that includes a minute reaching the hull and a minute resurfacing. The angle of the yacht on its side and the cramped conditions makes these dives difficult and dangerous. Now, 2 passengers, Charlotte Golansky and her baby daughter, survived because they'd gone to the top deck, but it's thought the missing passengers were in cabins on the bottom deck of the yacht. Divers struggled to gain access, but drilled a hole in the hull and reached the cabins. It's slow going because the spaces are narrow and doorways have been blocked by furniture and debris displaced as the yacht capsized. Now, there's been much speculation as to what went wrong here, but the reality is it's too early to say. And experts tell us this investigation is unlikely to conclude this year.
Well, let's cross live now to Ashna in Sicily. And Ashna, the worst possible news for the families waiting there.
That's right. The search today has been paused overnight after a full day that has been devastating and distressing for those divers who have made that discovery. Those 5 people are yet to be identified. Their names, their ages, their genders have not been revealed. It's thought that Italian authorities are keen to make the family members aware before they make those names public. The significance of that moment, the poignancy of that moment was not lost on some 50 people or so that had gathered across the harbour side just to witness that moment that those bodies were finally recovered. They've been waiting for news for days and hours on end. And whilst they've been waiting for news, so have the 15 survivors, which we know and who we know are staying nearby. We know at the same time the Coast Guard investigators are continuing their work. Italian investigators and inspectors, we know, have been speaking to survivors, including, as I mentioned in that piece, the captain of the yacht himself. He faced a number of hours of questioning yesterday, and all of his testimony, all of that detail to help sort of create a reconstruction will be vital in the coming weeks and months ahead. But as for here in Porticello, that search continues tomorrow for that one still missing person.
Ashna, thank you. Well, back here in the UK, a woman and her 3 young children, all aged under 10, have died in a house fire in Bradford. Police say the blaze was started deliberately and have arrested a man on suspicion of murder. He's currently in a critical condition in hospital, as Sky's Rachel Venables reports.
A mum and her 3 young children, all killed in a house fire that police believe was started deliberately. Aubrey Birtle was 22 months old. Her brother Oscar, just 5, a 9-year-old big sister Dennisty all died along with their mum, 29-year-old Bryony Gowith. Drone footage shows the house now burnt black, a paddling pool still in the back garden. We know the fire broke out in the early hours of this morning, when most people would have been fast asleep. Now forensic teams work through the charred remains of the house, a murder investigation underway.
We believe that the fire was started deliberately, and this incident was domestic related. Detectives from our homicide and major inquiry team have launched a murder investigation into the fire. A 39-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder and is currently in a critical condition in hospital.
Outside the police cordon, people have begun to bring tributes. Flowers, teddy bears and cards for a young family lost in the most tragic of circumstances. Rachel Venables, Sky News.
Well, let's turn now to one of the difficult decisions facing the Chancellor ahead of this autumn's budget. The UK has the best performing economy in the G7, but today data confirm that borrowing in July rose to the highest level since the pandemic. So does this mean tax rises are now inevitable? Here's Sky's economics and data editor, Ed Conway.
The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, says she faces a dire inheritance with the public finances, with the economy. Is that really the case? Well, just recently we've got numbers through on the economy which suggest maybe it's not quite that bad. This is showing you economic growth, comparing industrialised economies, the US, Japan, Canada, France. This is for last year, critically. And look, the UK was one of the weakest in the G7, over there, 0.1%. Now look at the first 6 months of this year, OK? So the latest data, and wow, look at that. The UK up to the fastest in the first 6 months of this year, economy growing in the G7, faster even than the US and the rest. So a lot of people look at this and they say, well, it's not that dire, frankly, is it? But now look at the public finances, OK? And there are various different ways of measuring this. We're talking about basically what the government is bringing in taxes and spending. This is the bringing in side of it, OK? And the Office of Budget Responsibility expects taxes to go up and up and up in terms of the amount that's been raised cumulatively over the year to about just over £1 trillion, OK? So that's money coming in. That's the expectation. Now let's just zoom in on the first few months of the year, because that's the data we've got, and work out whether that has actually happened. So this red line is what has actually happened. And it's pretty much bang on. And that's important. It's actually a little bit below. That's important because if you thought the economy was going gangbusters, you'd expect that line to be a bit higher because people are making more money and they're paying more in taxes. But that's not happening. But what is happening, OK, is something with spending. So we're doing the same thing with spending. That line is how much the government spends gradually over the course of the year, 1.1 trillion, a little bit more than it makes in money. That's why we have deficits. And now look at what's actually happened. So we'll zoom in, just looking at the first few months of the year. Red line is what has actually happened. And it's a different pattern here. Look, that red line is slightly above where the OBR thought it would be around this time of year. How much above? It's about £9 billion higher. Now, that may not sound like much, but first of all, we're still early in the year, only 4 months of the data, so it could get worse. And secondly, well, remember £9 billion, OK, because it's a significant number when it comes to this. We're talking now about the government's fiscal rules. It's got a number of fiscal rules, and perhaps the most biting of them is that it needs to get the national debt, that's what this line is, the higher that is, the more we have in debt as a percentage of GDP. It needs to get that falling by the 5th year of the forecast horizon, so in 5 years' time. And right now, if I zoom in, you can see it's just about falling from 93.2% of GDP down to 92.9% of GDP. Not by much. And how much is that in cash terms? This bit here, I'll just have to zoom in so you can properly see. This bit here, it's £9 billion. So essentially, we have already spent the headroom in the first 4 months of this year, which is why the Chancellor believes there are going to be more tax rises, more spending cuts to come in that budget.
Ed Conway there. Well, from the economy to border security, that's because the Home Office today confirmed the first details of Labour's plan to tackle illegal immigration. Campsfield House and Haslar immigration centres in Oxfordshire and Hampshire will be reopened. 290 beds will be made available with a long-term target of 1,000 beds. It's part of a wider plan to increase the removal of illegal migrants from the UK, back to levels not seen since 2018. Well, ministers have already announced a new border security command to tackle people smuggling gangs. 100 new specialist intelligence officers will also be recruited by the National Crime Agency, and a new illegal working programme will target business owners who employ people with no right to stay in the country. Here's our chief political correspondent, John Craig.
The new front line in the Labour government's battle to tackle illegal migration. Haslar at Gosport in Hampshire is one of 2 former immigration detention centres due to reopen as ministers attempt to speed up the deportation of illegal migrants.
The steps we're taking to see a surge in returns over the next 6 months, to see the highest levels of returns that we will have seen over the last 5 years, is a really important part of making sure that those who have no right to stay know that they will be returned.
Close Campsfield now!
The other proposed detention site, Campsfield at Kidlington in Oxfordshire, is more controversial. There were regular protests when it was an immigration centre from 1993 until 2018.
It needs to be some system, but people need to be looked after like humans. I think that's the worry amongst people, that it's like a prison camp.
I think it's a good idea to open it, to be honest. Got to go somewhere, haven't they?
Yeah, if it's going to save the government some money, I don't see any problem in it, but there'll be a lot more demonstrations up there like there was before.
2 years ago, there was a backlash in Parliament from Labour and other opposition MPs when the Conservative government proposed the reopening of Campsfield and Haslar as immigration detention centres. And the reopening was delayed. Now, senior Conservatives are attacking Labour's plans.
When I was Home Secretary, we were averaging the returns flights for 30,000 people a year. And what the government have said in their own announcement is that since taking office, they've returned just 200 people, which is frankly pathetic.
And a former UK Border Force boss says Labour's plans are unlikely to be enough to stop the boats.
This is international organised crime. It demands an international response. There's only a limited amount that the UK enforcement agencies can do on their own. We will need the collaboration of Europol, of Frontex, of the EU Commission, a number of member states, as well as other countries.
Freedom, don't injure them!
But here in the UK, there could now be a repeat of previous protests at the proposed detention sites. John Craig, Sky News.
West Yorkshire Police has launched a murder investigation into the death of an Amazon delivery driver in Leeds. Police say the man was trying to stop someone stealing his van yesterday evening when the suspect drove off, leaving the driver partly hanging onto the passenger side of the door. He died after the Silverford Transit cargo crashed into parked cars. Police are still searching for the suspect. A 53-year-old man has been killed by his own XL bully dog in Accrington. Lancashire police say the owner, David Daintree, was found dead in his home yesterday evening. Officers say they had no alternative but to shoot the animal dead as it continued to pose a significant threat of serious harm. And masked Romanian police officers have raided the home of the influencer Andrew Tate in Romania after new allegations of trafficking minors and sex with a minor. He is already awaiting trial on charges of human trafficking, rape and forming a criminal gang to exploit women. Police in Pakistan have arrested a man suspected of spreading disinformation online, which has been blamed for sparking riots in the wake of the Southport stabbings. Fahad Asif was linked to the Channel 3 Now website, which posted an article hours after the Southport knife attack with false information about the attacker.
Good evening then from the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, where overnight a power couple commanded the stage and delivered a message of hope. With now just 75 days until voters take to the polls, the former President Barack and former First Lady Michelle Obama urged those watching to vote for a new chapter in Kamala Harris. James Matthews reports on their enduring impact.
It started on Chicago's South Side. Tracing back the Obama story takes you along the shores of Lake Michigan to the corner of 53rd Street and Dorchester Avenue and the Kissing Rock, where it got romantic. Theirs is the African-American story still being written.
We are ready for a President Kamala Harris.
At the Democratic convention, the first black president, the man who made history, spoke of the woman he said could make it again.
I am feeling hopeful because this convention has always been pretty good to kids with funny names who believe in a country where anything is possible. We do not need 4 more years of bluster and bumbling and chaos. We have seen that movie before, and we all know that the sequel is usually worse.
DNC, turn out for what?
They rolled out the celebrities for the roll call.
Kamala
On a presidential stage, there was, some say, the best president America never had.
Who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs?
Please tell me the truth. I'm up at 3 a.m., no snooze.
Across town, we found them rapping in Obama's neighborhood. Here, their influence has been felt through the generations. As times change, so do the issues.
In terms of inspiration, I think it made a difference in terms of involvement. With him being there, it gave most of our people, and especially the young people, a reason to get up and go to the polling place and cast a vote.
Has he made a difference to your life?
I want to say yeah, but unfortunately, outside of the traffic around here, when he comes back, not much has changed, man.
Be nice to see an African-American woman be president if they weren't funding a genocide. So, yeah.
And that's your priority?
That's my priority.
There's been a cotton wool wrapping around the launch of Kamala Harris, presidential nominee. The endorsement of a party in Chicago was a given. So too from the Obamas of the South Side. It will get tougher. Her running mate Tim Walz has been doing a walkthrough before his conference address. He'll be joined by another former president, Bill Clinton. They are day 3 headliners with a tough act to follow from day 2. This crowd had shown adulation for the local boy done good, and with enduring influence. The history maker who came with the message that history shouldn't hurt. James Matthews, Sky News in Chicago.
Well, looking at that, you could be forgiven for thinking the Democrats have well and truly taken over Illinois, but not everyone is convinced Kamala Harris has got what it takes to win in November, as our US correspondent Martha Kellner has been finding out.
In Woodstock, Illinois, they know all about the cycle of repetition. This is the small town where the movie Groundhog Day was filmed. But the political monotony is now shattered by the sudden entrance of Kamala Harris into the 2024 election race. For many, though, she is an elusive candidate.
I want to hear what she's going to do. What's going to be different than what's already been done?
Matt owns a shop selling model trains and doesn't know who he'll vote for in November.
It's tough to make a decision on something that you were thinking one way, and now you have to switch your gears because it's a whole new person.
Will you look at policies as well as personalities?
Always, especially things that affect small business. The big problem is you don't totally know her policies yet.
McHenry County is a community shaped by the railroads. It voted narrowly for Trump in 2020. He seemed to be careering to victory until the gears shifted in this race last month. Now the momentum is clearly with Harris.
She's smart, and I believe she's going to win. Very excited about this. She just has that energy and that enthusiasm, and there's a difference from being 80 to 60. There just is.
All right, careful, careful.
Harris has also improved polling among people of colour.
Look at Mommy.
But with her pro-choice stance, she'll struggle to win over evangelical Christians like Latasha.
I go based on the Bible, and I value life.
You're not going to vote for Kamala then just because she's a woman?
Oh, no. No, because you could be wrong. You could be not good for the job.
In nearby Island Lake, they're celebrating the annual Corn Fest. But as quickly as the winner of the eating contest is crowned, the deep divisions in this community are exposed.
She's not a good candidate at all. She's frankly dumb as a stump. She's not very bright. You see her do her word salads and she just can't articulate a thought.
Who do you think is going to be in the White House in January?
I truly believe Trump will be there. I really do. I really do.
You think the same?
Yeah, if it's not, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I think so.
This is the last great hope.
Yeah.
And I think she will destroy it.
Civil war, there'd be a revolution.
You think that'd be if he's not in or if he is in?
I guarantee if they steal it, there'd be a revolution. We the people own plenty of firearms. There's more gun owners than enlisted servicemen, and they are not going to go against patriots. I don't care what color camouflage comes after me. If you're going to try to put me in a detention camp or try to re-educate me, I'll kill you.
I just think what you're saying about the potential for people taking arms and being violent, that's quite scary.
This is the holy war in the United States. We're fighting for God by voting for Trump.
It's a scene setter which shatters the genteel of this event. Tensions are clearly boiling under the surface here. 10 weeks until an election where the true stakes cannot be known. Martha Kellner, Sky News, McHenry County, Illinois.
Mark Stone is with me, and back to the Democrats here, and a lot of excitement, but excitement doesn't necessarily mean votes.
No, Mark, votes come from policy, and there has been very little of that so far here at the Democratic Party convention. People have struggled to define Kamala Harris and Tim Walz because they just don't quite know the detail of what they stand for. Will we get any more of that tonight? I don't know, maybe a bit. We'll certainly get to know Tim Walz a bit better. He is a real counterbalance to Kamala Harris. If she is the so-called wokey liberal from California, from San Francisco, well, he is the small-town guy, the self-styled small-town guy who will perhaps appeal to a different type of voter. Some of those may be in Martha's report. We'll hear from him tonight. We'll hear from Bill Clinton, titan of the Democratic Party, former president, of course, and a sprinkling of celebrities as well. John Legend, Stevie Wonder, a couple of surprises too. So plenty more celebrity tonight, plenty more excitement, maybe not that much more policy.
OK, Mark, thanks very much indeed. Just a reminder then that you can continue to watch our live coverage of the Democratic National Convention as the vice presidential nominee, Tim Walz, and former President Bill Clinton take centre stage from 2 a.m. That's on Sky News. Lots on our live blog, on our Sky News app too. But for now, back to Anna in London.
Mark, thank you. Now, if you are a Beatles fan and have had a hard day's night, this may be your thing. You can now book an Airbnb in a place that is rooted in their history, run by the band's first drummer. Shingi Marurike has been speaking to the first paying guests.
Good memories, a lot of fun times.
Pete Best still sometimes thinks of yesterday, what was and what could have been.
We were forerunners for everything that was going on in Liverpool in the music industry.
He was the original drummer in the Beatles, replaced before the band shot to stardom.
Don't get me wrong, initially there was a lot of hardship, financial embarrassment because of the situation and the way it happened. But life compensates, you know, you don't think about that at the time. But maybe it's my karma, you know, it wasn't meant to be.
Before that disappointment, a connection with the Fab Four that started here in a family home, which he's now turned into an Airbnb.
Beatles played here, Casbah. Beatles partied here, the house. Beatles slept here. Totally unique.
The first to stay, Andy and Evelyn, who travelled all the way from Glasgow for a room in the Sir Paul McCartney suite.
It meant so much to me. They're like friends to me. When I was a teenager, I really discovered them because I was a wee bit young when they were about. But I found a record of my brother's and played it and thought this is actually really good.
The pop world had never seen anything quite like Beatlemania. Now in the place of screaming crowds is a nostalgia that's still so easy to buy and sell.
The history of the Beatles is quite literally etched into this basement. An early version of the band played here, while they also helped decorate it too. More than 6 decades on, the Casbah Club is part of an industry related to the band that so many people still want a piece of.
But this business idea is also a reflection of the fact the man who once lived here was on the cusp of something remarkable. Debbie saw the Beatles more than 200 times and still remembers when the lineup changed.
You can understand how Pete must have felt. He'd be absolutely devastated to think this. And they were on the verge of something big. Must have been soul-destroying for him. So, you know, he deserves everything he's got today.
In the places that made them and for the people they knew, the Beatles are not just a brand, they go beyond that. Shingi Marike, Sky News, Liverpool.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview tonight, joined by The Times' chief political correspondent, Aubrey Allegretti, and The Telegraph's deputy comment editor, Annabel Denham. Welcome to both of you. And certainly among the stories we will be discussing this on the front of the Daily Mail. Its headline, super yacht hope lost as divers find 5 bodies. That and more, of course, when we come back. Well, this is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. First, though, a reminder of our top stories this evening. 5 bodies have been found inside the sunken super yacht off the coast of Sicily. 1 person is still missing. Here in the UK, 3 children aged under 10 and a woman have died in a house fire in Bradford. A man has been arrested. And after the Obamas stole the show, the Democratic National Convention gets ready to greet another old favourite. This time, it's Bill Clinton and the new boy vice presidential nominee, Tim Walz. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with Aubrey Allegretti, the chief political correspondent of The Times, and the Telegraph's deputy comment editor, Annabel Denham. Welcome to both of you. So as ever, let's check out the front pages, starting with the Daily Express reporting that the British tycoon Mike Lynch and his daughter Hannah are among the dead in the yacht disaster off the coast of Sicily. On the front page of the Daily Mail, hope is lost as divers find 5 bodies, the paper says. The Times also leading with the discovery of 5 bodies in the wreck of the super yacht. Elsewhere, the Daily Mirror reports on the mum and 3 children killed in a house fire in Bradford. The Guardian says the National Crime Agency could extradite foreign cyber criminals to tackle a rise in the number of young people being blackmailed over sexual images. The Telegraph leads with reports of an Alzheimer's wonder drug that can slow cognitive decline by nearly 30%. According to the Financial Times, the Trades Union Congress is expected to push the government to roll back pay cuts brought in under the Conservatives. While the Eye leads with Fergal Sharkey warning the government has no real plan to fix the country's sewage crisis. Well, the Metro carries calls to give Taylor Swift the freedom of the City of London after her recent Wembley concerts were forecast to contribute £300 million to the capital's economy and £1 billion to the UK overall. And the Star tells us the unfortunate tale involving a python and a lavatory, as it said here. Read that for yourself, as we say. Scan the QR code that you'll see on screen during the programme. You can check out the front pages of those newspapers while you listen to our guests. So let's head to Aubrey and Annabel. Welcome to you. And, you know, the news today that the families had been dreading. 5 bodies found in this super yacht, the Bayesian. 1 person still missing. 4 bodies recovered in what has been, no doubt, a really difficult rescue operation, Annabelle.
Yes, a very difficult, as you say, rescue operation, an immensely difficult time for the families of those who are on that yacht. And I think, you know, our deepest sympathies with all of them and for what they're going through at the moment. It is just such a sad tragedy, and it seems to have been a freak event. The yacht having capsized after a water spout struck it, perhaps because of the size of the mast on the boat. It seemed to have capsized very quickly, sunk very quickly, and a very difficult rescue mission ensued. You know, after that, 22 people were on board the boat. You know, a number did survive, but you know, sadly, unfortunately, the divers have found 5 bodies, and Mail reporting that the tycoon Mike Lynch and his daughter are thought to be among those who have been recovered. I think over the last few days, there's just been that glimmer of hope, hasn't there, that perhaps, you know, they might discover that there had been an air pocket that had allowed those on board who had sunk with the ship to survive until rescuers were able to get to them. But of course, those rescuers are only able to go down for 12 minutes at a time, and having to, it's a dangerous mission for them, facing debris and furniture and that sort of thing from the ships. It's very difficult in that respect as well. But, you know, ultimately, I think this is the tragic news that we hope we weren't going to read, but we're perhaps expecting.
Well, one technical diving expert we spoke to this evening shocked that they were going down with single canisters of oxygen, actually, which really does limit the amount of time they can go down there. Although employing, you know, other techniques to ROVs, these remotely operated vehicles, and drones as well, breaking through the hull, we understand, because of the difficulties of getting, you know, through the narrow passageways of a yacht, even of this size. So the Daily Mail suggesting, as you said, the tycoon Mike Lynch and his daughter thought to be among those discovered. although the authorities in Sicily have not confirmed the names of those who've been found. The Daily Express as well, divers find the bodies of Tycoon and his daughter. And there have been so many tributes to Mike Lynch and the work he's done, and the work he could have done, haven't there, over the last few days?
There certainly have, and particularly the sort of very poignant comments he made quite recently about how he felt like he'd been given a second lease of life, which seemed to ring particularly sort of harshly given the fate that he appears to have come to. Obviously, we're told that under Italian law, the bodies have to be identified by a family member or someone close to the victim, which is why there hasn't been confirmation from them. But the Telegraph reporting that the director of Sicily's Civil Protection Agency says that Mr Lynch and his daughter are those who've been found. So we're still waiting for confirmation, but lots of the papers reporting Italian authorities believe it was them. Obviously, a really complex operation. Interesting, they say they've got divers who worked on the 2012 Costa Concordia disaster as well, and they've been trying to cut through glass that's sort of 3 centimetres thick, 158 feet under the water. So this has obviously taken a long time, and as that time has gone on, I suspect that the chances of survival have diminished, and that's probably why we're going to end up getting, you know, sad news later today. They have found the 5th body. It sounds like they've not been able to recover it, but they expect there'll be a 6th as well.
And the search resumes in daylight, obviously, for the final missing person. The Daily Telegraph starts to talk about the investigation. You know, everybody wants to know what caused this, and talks about the captain, James Cutfield, 51, being questioned by the prosecutors from the public prosecutor's office in a town nearby for 2 hours. And they've got a quote from his brother, Mark, saying that he was a well-respected, lifelong seafarer. He said Mr Cutfield had captained luxury yachts for the past 8 years, had worked on them since he was a teenager, and was a very good sailor, originally from North Shore, Auckland in New Zealand. So you start to, you know, emerge about who was on board. And certainly tonight I spoke to the captain of the yacht who had rescued the 15 people. They had been trying really hard themselves to keep around their anchor by turning the engine on and moving around. Then one of his passengers noticed a flare. They put their tender out, went towards what turned out to be the life raft, and brought on board 15 people, including that baby, and including the captain, who had said to him that it went down in a maximum of 2 minutes, although subsequently this captain, Carsten Brunner, said that he'd seen a video that it went down in about 60 seconds. But he also questioned this mast, you know, suggesting that perhaps boat design needs to change because of the size of this mast, 72 metres high, you know, taller than the depth of the water they're in. So there will be questions about the design, even though tonight on Sky News we spoke to the CEO of the manufacturer, and he said it was a very stable yacht. Unsinkable is how he described it. So you start to see...
There was another famous ship that was once called Unsinkable, wasn't there? But,
well, indeed so, indeed so. But this, you know, the investigation... You know, you need to recover the vessel, presumably, don't you? To see.
Absolutely, and often it's kind of out of tragedy that lessons are learned about how to prevent future things like this. I mean, it appears, you know, we hope to have been a freak accident, but, yeah, the paper's reporting that the captain of the ship is being questioned by officials in Italy, as apparently is being done to all of the survivors. So I don't think that's to suggest that he's necessarily under criminal investigation. But obviously they'll be keen to understand exactly what he was doing, whether or not this device which is used to ensure balance of the boat was raised, and whether or not that might have contributed or potentially helped the boat be stabilised in spite of the freak weather event. But that will certainly be part of the next phase of the investigation.
I think when there are tragedies like this, and as you say, it does at the moment look like a freak event, there's always this temptation to try and point the finger. So, you know, it would be the crew, and did they follow the protocols? Did they batten down the hatches that they should have done? But as you say, Anna, would have been immensely quick from the sounds of things. Could they have responded quickly enough? It would be the design of the boat, that it was quite open plan, there was a lot of glass. Did that make it more vulnerable? The mast, as we've discussed, you know, there have been questions also about the anchor. Was the anchor dropped correctly? Did that budge slightly to make the ship more vulnerable? You know, and ultimately, you just have to wonder whether, unfortunately, despite the fact that they're in quite a sheltered place, they just weren't protected against
yes,
this.
And maritime authorities say, can you cater for improbable events which cause catastrophe, effectively, and you can't always factor those in. Let's move on, shall we? A whole series of stories about, one, taxes needing to go up, and two, pressure on public sector pay. So let's start with the FT first of all, and this is the TUC and public sector unions, Labour backers, the paper reminds us, challenging Labour to pay more to repair losses caused by the Conservatives, Aubrey.
Yeah, I mean, this is quite interesting because it points to the big row that Labour are going to face in about a month's time when the spotlight is shone very brightly on them at party conference. And this will obviously be a big celebration for the party. There'll be jubilation and a real attempt to sort of stage manage how it looks. But there will obviously be major union figures who are pushing for significant pay restoration for their tens of thousands of members. And so you have the Trades Union Congress, which is going to be chaired, I think, by the head of the Fire Brigades Union this time. And he has said that they're going to push for restoration for pay levels. He says pay levels have fallen by an average of 1.5% per year since 2011, and they want pay restoration, i.e. a real terms pay increase to the levels that they were getting in 2011. Economists estimate apparently that each 1 percentage point rise in the public sector pay bill would cost around £2.5 billion to taxpayers. So if you took the sort of pay restoration that might be needed, that the FT says is 21%, so equal to £50 billion. I mean, we're talking about money that the Labour government will say isn't there and they probably wouldn't give even if it was. But they are obviously going to have quite a significant battle on their hands when they go to Liverpool in September, I think it is.
Yeah, early to mid, I think it is. I did look it up and I've lost a bit of paper. But in the meantime, the sort of what's going to be in the budget, and everyone's saying they're suggesting that this child benefit cap of 2 children could be lifted in the budget. That's in The Guardian, while The Telegraph is starting a report on where the tax rises could come, including on employers, it seems.
Yes, I mean, this is the question, is how much is the Labour government going to spend? And based on the last few weeks, it seems like it's going to be a lot because of these very generous pay increases that they've already offered to some public sector workers, including that 22% for junior doctors over 2 years. So what are they going to spend? And then the second question, of course, is how on earth are they going to pay for it? And
when will people start to ask, you give money to the public sector and you tax me for it? That's the sort of the equation, isn't it, for some people?
Sure, and of course we've already had Labour announce that they'll be removing the winter fuel allowance for pensioners, so there are concerns among retirees, among the elderly, that they are the ones who are going to be clobbered by the Labour Party in order to fund higher pay for...
So what is the Telegraph saying then? Because obviously the promise was they were not going to increase taxes on working people.
Yes, a cast-iron promise in the run-up to the general election that there would be a tax triple lock where they would not raise VAT, income tax or national insurance. Now there's some softening of that rhetoric from Darren Jones, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, who is alluding to the fact that Labour might increase employers' national insurance, so leaving employees' national insurance protected. And, you know, this is just really to try and maintain the fairy tale that it's not the employees who are paying employers' national insurance, when, of course, it is. It's a bit of a con, really, because employers will simply pass on that tax to the employees, perhaps in the form of lower wages or fewer promotion opportunities, and they might take on fewer workers. Exactly. So it'll be felt by someone. Someone somewhere is going to have to pay for this, whatever the Labour Party might be trying to suggest. But nonetheless, the situation is that we had the public finances data today. We've got this fiscal black hole, and we've got to find some way of filling.
This is going to be a daily what's going to be in the budget story, isn't it? But it's really fascinating to see what the opportunities are for Rachel Reeves. Coming up, though, an interesting one. Could people under the age of 30 soon be enjoying renewed freedom of movement in the European Union? Back with that in just a moment.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling. War, unrest, revolutions.
It's not his country, it's ours. and we're going to take it back.
They have succeeded for the first time in their country's history in removing a leader from power. Now, freedom! There was fighting here, but there's clearly now a lull, and they're using it to bring up more ammunition. We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world. This is a mass exodus in which Russia is hemorrhaging some of its brightest and its best. According to the local weather channel, there have been more than 2,500 lightning strikes, torrential rain and flash flooding, all on top of this week's lethal tornado. What stays with you most in this job is some of the people you meet. What is your worst fear about what the Russians want to do to the children?
They're just boosting demographics by stealing young people.
Would you like to take the opportunity, Mr. President, on Sky News to invite Barack Obama to come here? Mr. Trump, are you running for president? Can you confirm it?
We're going to take a look, a very serious look.
On that day, we saw your fighters killing women, killing children. Was that a mistake? Did you go too far? You couldn't control your fighters? The full force of the state is being used to crush any protest. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued with its ultimatum to the people of Ashkelon, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
Another alarm. The mood here is jittery and nervous.
We're seeing the world get more and more divided, and it's our job to try to make sense of it all.
Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview, joined once again by Aubrey Allegretti and Annabel Denham from The Times and The Telegraph, respectively. Now then, The Times then, Aubrey. Free movement for the under-30s in a reset of EU relations with this Labour government. What's the story?
Yes, we've heard a lot in recent weeks about how Keir Starmer wants to reset Britain's relationship with the EU, and there is some sort of scepticism and curiosity about what that means. And it's unlikely that we're going to hear too much too quickly, but we are hearing the sort of rumblings of one of the plans. So my colleague Oliver Wright in The Times reports that ministers are preparing to allow younger Europeans, those are people aged under 30, to live and work in Britain as part of a reciprocal deal. Now, it has to be said that Labour has said this is not a return to free movement. So this is not, you know, any EU citizen who wants to come here will be able to. This is a sort of youth mobility scheme which would be viewed as a way to try and boost employment, fill some job vacancies. But Labour has, of course, been slightly sceptical about the record numbers of legal migration that we've seen under the Conservatives, so they probably wouldn't want this to get sort of too out of hand. They would also point to the fact that the EU would be brought into line with schemes that already exist with other countries, so Canada and Australia. There are schemes that exist for young people to be able to go over there and vice versa.
Yeah.
So it's one to watch.
Yeah, and migration figures imminent as well, obviously. Very quickly, 20-mile-an-hour zones, love them, hate them. This Labour government seems to like them despite what happened in Wales.
Yes, rails really ought to offer a cautionary tale, given how unpopular they were and how embarrassing it was really for the Welsh Labour government to have to announce that it was going to retreat on the rollout in certain areas. And, you know, we ought to have a more practical approach to this, which is perhaps you have a reduced speed limit around schools and hospitals and those sorts of places, but actually you could drive at 30 miles an hour in most other built-up areas. But nonetheless, the new Transport Secretary, Louise Hay, has said that she will hand local authorities essentially powers to introduce these schemes, 20-mile-an-hour speed limits and low-traffic neighbourhoods, unpopular, I think, in equal measure. Apart from with maybe councils, because they're... yes. But and also, I imagine some local authorities who will see them as money raisers.
OK, Annabelle, Aubrey, great to see you both. See you more for later. Thank you very much indeed. Let's take a look at the weather then. Well, the remnants of Hurricane Ernesto will bring wind and rain from the Atlantic with unsettled conditions lasting into the bank holiday weekend, I'm afraid. Thursday then starting mild and windy with disruptive winds possible across northwest Wales, northwest England and southern Scotland. There will be locally heavy rain in parts of the north and west too. That rain will turn light and patchy through the morning, clearing into southeastern Britain, although Kent may well stay dry. Elsewhere, expect plenty of sunshine. There'll be a scattering of blustery showers, though still. The wind will ease from the west, but will remain strong in the far north and southeast. It will be on the cool side overall. The southeast will turn mainly dry and sunny through the afternoon, whereas another band of rain will move into Ireland. Friday, we'll see early wind and rain giving way to sunshine, but there will be a scattering of showers, mainly in the north and west. Saturday, cool, further showers, some heavy, but more general rain will threaten the south during the morning. We'll stay with us. Sky News at 11 is next. We will bring you more on the sunken luxury super yacht off Sicily as the boat's manufacturer tells Sky News it was completely safe. It's 11 o'clock. This is Sky News' extended news review and press preview. Our top story. 5 bodies are found inside the sunken superyacht off the coast of Sicily. 1 person is still missing. Cave divers and drones searched the seabed for 3 days.